I'd just like to give you a brief introduction to our presenter. Michelle Tung is an entrepreneur, management consultant, business mentor, writer, and trainer. She's the managing director and co-founder of INVENI Business and Technology Limited, the Caribbean's leading China direct sourcing solutions company. Michelle has been building her career in China sourcing steadily over the last 8 years. Recognized as an expert in China sourcing, Michelle has been a feature presenter for a number of China sourcing seminars, including the 2017 Doing Business in China seminar, hosted by the Business Investment and Development Corporation in Barbados. In March 2018, she was a feature presenter at the CEO's Back to School series under the theme, Removing Market Borders, Strategies for Reaching Your Global Marketplace. The event was hosted by the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business, University of the West Indies. In her capacity as managing director at INVENI, she has responsibility for the firm's operations and strategic direction, marketing and business development, client services, project management, and other key functional areas. Michelle is an expert in the field of marketing and business development strategy. Her professional experience comprises over 15 years in the financial services industry. In addition to senior executive management positions at state companies in the key areas of tourism development, market planning and development, procurement, project management, product development, construction, business development, and business consulting. She's the founder and principal consultant of LCT Consulting and Associates Limited, a strategic marketing and business development consulting firm, and the co-founder of Share Home Caribbean, the leading consulting firm on the sharing economy in the Caribbean. Michelle's passion lies in mentoring businesses and helping clients to achieve goals they initially deem impossible. She believes that our most valuable offering is helping others, and paying it forward leads to your own success. Michelle is the president of QUOTA International of Trinidad and Tobago, the local arm of QUOTA International, a non-profit organization empowering women, children, the deaf, hard of hearing, and people with speech difficulties in local communities around the world. She is the Director, Communications and PR on the board of the Association of Female Executives of Trinidad and Tobago, AFET. And Michelle holds an MBA with a major in international marketing from the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business, University of the West Indies, and a BA in International Business Administration from the University of Lincoln, United Kingdom. And with that succinct introduction, it is my great pleasure to hand you now over to Michelle for today's webinar presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Deborah. Thank you so much for that introduction. And most definitely, I'm very happy to be here to conduct this presentation. Thank you very much to the exporTT team, to Mr. Bishad for the invitation. And I'm looking forward to a very insightful and, well, hopefully interactive presentation by the end of today. So thank you so much. Our presentation today again is on sourcing from China and getting a good grip and understanding as to what you do in order to ensure success. Moving on from there, now I'm not going to say anything else about myself. I think Deborah was pretty clear in terms of the reading out of my bio. But just let's get going. We have quite a bit to actually cover, and it's just for 2 hours. That includes a question and answer segment. So I'm going to try to do as much as I possibly can under these headings to ensure that when you leave here, the tools that you take with you is applicable almost right away, depending on where you're operating from. If you own your own business, if you're looking to source online, and those kinds of things. So our agenda today, we are looking at understanding, why China, which I'm sure we have a good understanding, but it's always good to go back and do a review, try and understand the challenges of sourcing. Sometimes we bypass that, thinking it's pretty easy to navigate such a complex market. We are going to touch a bit on COVID-19 and its impact what's happening in the Chinese market, how things has changed. We're going to look at the various sourcing models that is used in China as it pertains to sourcing there and basically across Asia. How do we find suppliers? Furthermore, how do we evaluate those suppliers? And then we look at negotiations. Most importantly, tackling quality control, not in its entirety, because that in itself is an entire webinar, and touch briefly on managing logistics. In putting together this presentation, I just wanted to try and touch on all of the key aspects of sourcing. So as I said before, when you leave here, there are some things that you can apply right away to your own business. So just to give you a little bit more information in terms of INVENI, and this has been no way a sales pitch, but you need to understand why we qualify to actually do this presentation, why I'm this person, and this slide just tells you a little bit more in terms of who we provide our services to. And just to let you know, we are a registered limited liability company in Trinidad and Tobago with external operations in China. What does that mean is that we do have, and we work with a China team on the ground across China, across multiple sectors, yeah, and across multiple industries as well. So that's it in terms of us. But let's move on now. Looking at China as a whole, this particular slide is just showing you what China was 30 years ago. And as some of you may know, I know you're here to find out about sourcing, but it's good to have a good understanding of the market that you're either trying to break into or to learn how you import and where they came from. The fact is, China has built its infrastructure up over the last 30 years as the leading global exporter and importer in some instances, depending on product. And it is been growing, vastly as, yeah, it has been growing quite a lot. So moving away from the picture that you just saw into what it is now, Shanghai is totally amazing. You have Beijing airport on the bottom right of your screen. That is the third largest airport in the world at the moment, and everything is just happening, in this hub that is China. China, as those of us that do business in China, and I'm not just talking about importing or in other countries in Asia, China is normally referred to as a continent on its own. And while it has been growing significantly because of what is taking place now in the world with respect to the coronavirus pandemic, obviously, that is where it's supposedly started. And of course, it's going to impact that environment. They are now getting out of that particular wave and creeping back into some level of normalcy under the new normal under which we are all now existing. So what that means for the country is that for the first time since 1992, when they started to track China's development, the economy will actually not have a double-digit growth. So that is important to note because it is going to impact the way that you do business on the ground in China in the coming months, maybe even in the next year or two. So please take note of that. So, and here we are on to why do we source from China? Why would you not look at another market? Why not Vietnam? Why not India, Indonesia? Thailand, yeah. So why source from China? And it's pretty easy for the ones who are operating in the market already. It's because of the increased profits. It's because of the infrastructure that was developed by the Chinese government as it pertains to manufacturing, in that they have established a world-class standard. I always tell potential clients, and up to this day, even existing clients, you can get anything at any value that you want coming out of China. It is what it is you're willing to pay for. The quality levels are not the quality levels that you say, oh, well, it came from China, it's a bad product. No, if you wanted to have a quality product, then you would have done the work, with your manufacturer or with your wholesaler to ensure that you get the quality product that you're looking for. China provides on-time delivery, and of course, there is a vast quantum of raw materials to basically to produce any product. There's and of course, a skilled labor force. Just to note here, the labor force in China is highly educated, as well as the wages in China for labor has been creeping and significantly incrementally doing so over the last couple of years. So products are not going to be significantly cheaper depending on industry, but they're also swerving into the technology area as well, and they've been doing quite a bit of that. Yeah. So we have come to now the challenges of sourcing. And pretty soon we will have a poll that we're going to put up with respect to when I'm finished dealing with the slide. Sourcing from China has a lot of challenges. I always tell clients, potential and both of the existing too, when you source from China and you're doing it, let's say utilizing one of the B2B portals like Alibaba or AliExpress or Global Sources or any of the others, DHgate and all of these places that people utilize. The fact of the matter is we tend to take a North American approach to sourcing when we're doing it that way. And we have some sort of interaction with someone on the other side of your computer screen. Hopefully that person is legitimate, and you eventually get to a point where you place an order, and then all of a sudden you rock back and you decide, well, okay, I've placed my order, I now wait for my order to come. Sourcing from China is not placing an order on Amazon. You do not kick back and expect things to just appear via DHL or FedEx or whatever means, or ocean freight or whatever it is. Some of us have been lucky, yes. Some persons have gotten it to work for them, but the horror stories that comes out of it in terms of payments, in terms of not getting what you want, in terms of product quality, it is really, really horrendous. And then some people would say, okay, well, I was scammed. Well, there's a difference. You were either scammed, meaning that you sent your funds over to China to pay for a product where it went to someone's account within a supposed company because you did not conduct your due diligence, or you are simply an inexperienced buyer. And those are two things that you need to understand, because there are certain checks and balances that you need to put in place when you are actually doing sourcing. And a lot of persons tend to skip over those things because either one, they are not aware of it, or two, putting them in place is going to make their process longer, or they just don't want to spend the money to get a reliable partner to help them as they begin to do business in this complex market. So the decision is always yours. But at the end of the day, the challenges that you experience, of course, it's the language barriers, communication problems, is key. As I mentioned before, you place an order and you just, you send your money, whether it's 30%, 50%, whatever it is that you would have sent across to the supplier. But no one is minding your business, as we would say, in Trinidad and Tobago, on the ground in China. Because one thing when you're doing business in China is that you have to have a relationship or begin to build a relationship with the specific supplier that you have. Because in China, you could have a supplier today and they are gone tomorrow. And they're gone with your money and they're gone with everything else. Yeah. So building relationships is key. Our cultural differences is real at the end of the day. And we need to understand that. As I was saying, our cultural differences are real. How we process payments, do we understand, how payments are received in China, what's the best method to use, whether it's a wire transfer, whether it's letters of credit. The persons that come to me and tell me about credit card payments, well, I shudder sometimes with respect to that. Product quality assurance and inspection. How many times, and this question now is for experienced importers, do you actually conduct pre-shipment inspections on the ground before your goods leave China, before it leaves the factory, actually? Yeah, is anyone doing that inspection for you? And then, of course, as with any product being manufactured, you're going to have a situation where they are going to have defects. What is your defects percentage in terms of receipt before you forward that balance of payment when the product gets to the port before it leaves China? Yeah, and then we also have the intellectual property rights. Persons who we have had inventors approaching us to actually do their production in China. We have companies that are just looking to do some private labeling or whatever it is. The intellectual property rights, it's huge. How that is how you go about protecting yourself on the ground. That is another webinar in its entirety, but it is certainly very, very, very real and something that must be considered. Logistics and shipping. Logistics and shipping. How do you, something, well, I just sent it to the freight forwarder and they will do everything for me. So no problem with that, but just make sure you understand what is involved in that process. Who is preparing your export documentation on the ground, who is dealing with China's customs for you. These are the questions that you have to ask yourself. Yeah, so some of these challenges here are very real. Chinese law and regulations, I didn't really touch on that, but at the end of the day, a lot is happening, a lot is changing, especially now because of the COVID-19 situation. And I will get into more detail with that as we treat with COVID-19 at this point. So at this point, we want to just put up a poll so that I can have an understanding as to the experience levels of the participants on this web. So the question that we have for the first poll this morning is, do you currently import or manufacture products in China? And it's very simple, and a very simple yes or no. So we get an understanding as to the makeup of the audience and your level of experience in the Chinese markets. Okay, so in terms of the results, I am seeing that we have 14 persons out of the total number of participants have said yes, that they actually import from China. And then we have 43 out of the total of 76 saying that no, they do not import from China. So I guess that gives me a good understanding. So all of the information to be presented today will definitely assist the majority of persons who are actually on this webinar. So we want to look now in terms of the impact of COVID-19 in terms of China. This picture that you're actually seeing in your screen is a picture of Apple Corp's company Foxconn in China, and the workers have now returned to the factory. And this is how they have to enter the factory, being screened in terms of their temperature and wearing their mask and all of that. Inside of these companies as well, there are glass dividers and panes, ensuring that social distancing is maintained within the companies. The number of employees have also been decreased significantly, and this is not just for Foxconn. This is across the board in terms of that new normal that we are all trying to navigate. So in terms of factories and where factories are right now in terms of manufacturing and product development, and even in terms of wholesalers, because the wholesalers are going to need the factories to be operational in order for them to obtain the goods. Okay, so the factories are operational, and at least 90% of the factories are out there and they're working. However, COVID-19 has impacted the world. So whereas China is now, bringing itself back up from, that whole situation with COVID-19 between December and March, the rest of the world now is experiencing a lot of COVID-19 at the end of the day, a lot of the fallout from the pandemic. So it means that while they're able to ramp up production, having not produced for over 2 months, it means now that the demand for the goods is not where it needs to be. However, many of the factories have now, even though let's say you're producing clothing, for instance, many of the factories, in order for them to keep afloat, have now switched to medical supplies, because that is what is needed across the world, and a lot of it is coming out of China. So, from a factory perspective, other goods are still being manufactured, of course, and actually, I can tell you that whether you are looking at shoes and bags and any textiles and footwear and if you're in the chemical sector or whatever it is, all of that is still happening. However, there are longer lead times as it pertains to production with respect to those products, because a lot of what is taking place in the manufacturing sector is the production of masks and testing kits and gloves and PPE and across the board. And even with those products being manufactured, China now has, getting those products off of China now has to go through a major scrutiny when it lands in customs. And within the last week, the Chinese customs have confiscated over 11 million face masks and PPE equipment because it wasn't produced or manufactured by the supplier according to the FDA and the CE requirements. So these are things that you need to be mindful of. It is that you are looking at importing these types of products. Ensure that your manufacturer is an internationally certified manufacturer. He has all the relevant certs. Do the production of your mask. I always inform clients and potentials as well. Not every factory in China has an export license. Not because you are a manufacturer, it means that you're involved in the foreign trade. That means that your goods can exit China. That's not the way that it works. You need to conduct your due diligence and know what is happening on the ground. Yes, meaning that you need to have a reliable partner. In terms of shipping now out of China, yes, you can get your goods out, barring what's happening at the customs level in China before your goods can leave in terms of your medical supplies and PPE and the longer lead times for other products. But in terms of shipping, your air freight right now, the prices are crazy because it's fluctuating between 10 to 25 US dollars as of coming into this week. And of course, ocean freight as well. So you just need to be mindful of that in terms of what's happening on the ground. So COVID has really and severely impacted the supply chains, and that is across the world. But what is happening now in terms of production, if you're looking at manufacturing, let's say raw material inputs, or you're looking at importing, as I said, the medical supplies and so on, this is where the focus is, but be mindful of your shipping, be careful of your choice of supplier. And it is not, and I repeat again, it is not about cost or price. That's not how you source. Price is but one of the factors that you're going to utilize in terms of importing your goods from China. Yeah. So I hope everybody understands what it is I just was speaking about there in terms of your products and your delivery outlook. It is expected that things are going to get a lot better within the next 6 months. But again, it's going to take some time. I know of right here in Trinidad of importers who are importing products, and right now it is stuck in customs in different ports in China. So you just have to hold on, and as I said, ensure that you are utilizing the right supplier. So that leads me now into the business models. So in China, when you are doing sourcing, these three models are normally applicable. Yeah, and you want to be able to produce quality goods, you want to be able to purchase, even if you're purchasing off the shelf, one of these models are still going to be applicable to you. Yeah, so let's take a look at, and the three models, as you can see on your screen, is direct dealing, trading company, and a sourcing agency. Okay, so there are pros and cons in terms of utilizing each model. But let's look at it a little closely here. If you're looking at actually utilizing the direct dealing model, what happens with that direct dealing is simply you as an individual, as a company, reaching out directly to a manufacturer, not a wholesaler, a manufacturer, meaning a factory of where you are purchasing your goods from. Yeah. There are pros to that in that you will eliminate any costs of having a third party involved. You will be able to obtain good prices in most cases. And of course, you have full control of your import process. Yeah. You also, you have access to your manufacturers, right, and you are willing to work, you can work with them directly. Okay. Now, as I said, direct dealing has its pros and cons. It may not necessarily be the best option for persons or companies that are looking for smaller quantities. Because so, just continuing in terms of direct dealing, manufacturers, when you're dealing with a manufacturer that directly with a manufacturer or a factory, obviously their model is going to be high volume. At the end of the day, low price, high volume. So it means that your minimum order quantity is going to be a lot higher. Yeah, the import process for you may be a bit slow because you operating on this side of the world, you are going to experience the language barriers, the cultural differences, and the communication issues, bearing in mind the 12-hour difference. It is very, very important, regardless of model, that you are actually working with someone on the ground who can assist you, whether it's a sourcing agent, whether you have visited China and have met with a supplier, and you are involved with the having ongoing conversations with the export manager, whatever it is, because your order can get lost at the end of the day. Yes, and as I said before, some of the factories that you're dealing with, you need to ensure that due diligence is conducted to ensure that they have the export license. Because if you produce goods at a factory that does not have an export license and does not involve in foreign trade, well, that is a lot of that's a lot of time wasted and a lot of money that you're leaving on the table, and you would not be able to get back in terms of a return. Okay, the next model would be when you're dealing with trading companies, and you tend to, these are the types of companies that you will encounter when you are sourcing online. It is a good option to purchase a small amount of goods. Yes. The pricing will generally be higher because a trading company is actually working on behalf of a manufacturer, and in most cases they're selling a lot of goods, quite a number of goods, not just what you may be seeing on your screen or what you inquired about. So they are representing several manufacturers at the end of the day. And how it works is that the company places a margin on the goods that is being sourced. So they're going to have a wide product range. Yeah. And of course, if you're utilizing a trading company, one of the pros is going to be that you can now deal with multiple vendors. And this is what you you would experience when you're using, let's say, like Alibaba, or when you're using like Alibaba or any one of the other trade portals. On the con side, you have where, as I said, the pricing could be higher for the trading company, right? The trading company is likely to have between a 10 to 20% profit margin that they can offer you, and the markup will vary depending on the company, the trading company that you're actually utilizing. Of course, there's no transparency because the trading company is often going to be reluctant to reveal their manufacturing network, in that you will be dealing with the trading company, but you don't really have access to the manufacturer, which really and truly adds some difficulty because you don't know if that manufacturer that the trading company, from which a trading company will be purchasing on your behalf, if they are verified supplier, if an audit has been done on them to ensure that they are who they say they are and they are producing what they say they're producing. You don't know what level of quality control is involved in the process. As you certainly wouldn't get information in terms of their supply chain management. And going a step further, if you have any issues in terms of to dispute your case and a problem actually occurs, the trading company will defend the manufacturer's interests, as you are seeing there. But as I mentioned, the trading companies normally work for on behalf fixed factories. So it really is not on your behalf as a client, as someone that's purchasing online, right? And it is not uncommon for a trading company to speak for their supplier chain network and sometimes forget that they actually have done business with you. The trading company will defend their own interests and say that they have already told the factory how to make the product, but the problem will not go away for you, and that the factory is just not listening to them. That will not be good enough for you. And I will get into the specifics in a short while in terms of due diligence and how you negotiate and how you actually find the right supplier. When you buy from a sourcing agency, they have specific activities that they bring to the table for you, because they're really managing the risk, taking on the risk for you and representing you, the buyer, on the ground in China, so that you can feel comfortable that you're doing this business overseas, but the inherent risk that comes with it, you know, you're working with a reliable partner that has your best interests at heart. And some of the activities they would be involving is looking at a test order where, you know, you're gathering samples, sending the samples to you for approval, ensuring that when you give approval of the sample, should it be approved, that when they actually go, when the supplier actually goes into production, that what you approve is actually what you are getting according to specifications. Yes, they can also assist in terms of placing the orders based on your instructions. They assist you in factory negotiations. If you you could look at that from the point of view in terms of your minimum order quantities. Maybe it's probably your second order, or you're now looking at starting out. They could, and depending on the relationship that you have with your sourcing agency, and then the relationship that the sourcing agency has with the manufacturer, they can then leverage that relationship to reduce your minimum order quantities from upfront once you provide them with certain information. Maybe you are looking at purchasing twice a year, 3 times a year. So if the quantities upfront for the first order is certainly too large and is unmanageable, then they can bring that to the table, because at the end of the day, the supplier wants business. That's what it's all about. But they want long-term business. So they are looking to establish a long-term business relationship. Yeah. Yes, you can have one-off buying, which is fine. But in most instances, that is what the supplier is looking for. And when you are looking at, actually, if you're looking at this model and you want to bring a sourcing agency on board to assist you in terms of a partnership arrangement, that's one of the things you want to be looking for. You know, what is their spread in the local market? Have they worked across multiple industries? You know, what is their track record? You know, and how, you know, and if and in addition to that, what is their specialty? Maybe that they have a specialty in a particular industry, even though they're offering their sourcing services across multiple sectors. So these are things that you want, questions you want to raise. You know, they will arrange your shipping for you, prepare all of your export documentation on the ground. If you require warehousing for your product because some has been completed and you're still waiting on the rest to be before you're able to pack that container to ship it off, they can do that for you. They also assist in terms of payment, arranging payment. And as I said, the quality control is normally interwoven within their services because they're providing, in most instances, a complete end-to-end solution for persons who are looking to source in China at the end of the day. Is it going to cost you more? Yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more. However, you don't want to be stupid. At the end of the day, if you do not have the experience in this market, you don't want to go in there trying to save a couple dollars, hoping to make a lot, but you're going in, you know, not wanting to get the required assistance that you need on the ground for you to be successful off the bat. A lot of persons normally will get into the Chinese market and they get booed. And this is not just small manufacturers, small companies, this is also large companies as well, who will tell you that after what I've experienced, I will not be going back into the Chinese market, you know, and have lost thousands of dollars. Typically, the sourcing agency will charge a standard commission between 10 to 20% on the total value of the goods. They, of course, are going to be multilingual, enabled to provide great communications on the ground with multiple vendors. As I said before, they will leverage their agency expertise, communicating with a lot of vendors in their language and their time zone. So when your product is actually being produced at the manufacturer, they would be able to do what you call DPIs, undertake during production inspections to ensure that the products are being manufactured at based on your specific requirements, so that they don't produce something and that at the end of the production run, you realize that it's not what you want, and you have to start the process all over again. Again, as I said, just to close off in terms of the sourcing agencies, they enable on-site monitoring and, as I said, quality control. And we will talk about production management and quality control a little later down in the presentation, so you have an understanding as to what that entails. Yes, and of course, a sourcing agency can be used with trading companies or with manufacturers. And just to give you an idea in terms of what is involved in terms of the model with respect to the sourcing agency, this is just a graphical representation, and you can see from here that in the first scenario, the purchase order, right? So the purchase order is going from the importer to the manufacturer, but it is also passing through the buying agents or the sourcing agency. So it can work both ways, where you're actually purchasing directly, you're making your payments directly to the manufacturer, and then you would be providing an agency commission to the sourcing agent or the buying agent, or you have the buying agent actually taking control of the entire process, and you're sending the money to the buying agent. The buying agent pays the supplier the deposits, does all of the QC, manages the production process, and then at the end of it makes the final payment on your behalf. So that is an option. And of course, you can see on your right, maybe your left, I'm not sure, but on my right, that in terms of shipment, direct shipment from the manufacturer straight to the purchaser or the importer, that's really and truly how it works when you are utilizing a sourcing agency within your sourcing process. The model is utilized a lot for companies that are looking at an OEM solution in terms of producing their own product, having design and want to do a mass production of their product, it tends to be utilized for that. But then, of course, it can be utilized across the board for any product, even if you are wholesaling, even if you do manufacturing products at a factory, it's utilized across the board. And just to give you an idea of the sourcing process, this is a very, very basic sourcing process. I just thought I would introduce to you, where it starts off with you understanding your requirements, doing your supplier selection, your production monitoring, your inspection, and then your delivery. So this is more or less a safe process if your due diligence is along each and every step of this process. Now, I know I told myself that I wasn't going to be speaking too fast. I hope that I'm not, because I know I have a lot to cover. As I said to you, it's a simple 5-step process. If this is something that you employ in terms of your sourcing, you should be able to have good success once you understand each one of the steps and you do what's necessary within the steps. You would be able to source your product safely. And now we get to the excuse me, the meat of the matter as it pertains to sourcing, in that finding the right Chinese supplier. Now, it is very easy for you to find a supplier, but it is not that easy for you to find the right supplier for your products at the end of the day. Finding the right supplier is a pretty involved process. Companies who intend to be doing business in China for a while take the opportunity from the onset to understand this process and to ensure that it works for them, because they intend to be doing business in the market for a very long time. A lot of us, we want to do business in China because the first thing that comes to our minds is that sourcing from China is going to give me a cheap product. I think I want to debunk that myth. As I said before, you can get any product out of China at any quality level that you so desire. It is what you're willing to put into it in terms of your process and what you're willing to pay for at the end of the day. But if you are very serious about ensuring that, one, you are not wasting your hard-earned dollars, and that, two, you're looking at doing more business in this market, then you will undertake the relevant process in terms of finding the right supplier for you to work with on at the get-go. Yes. So how do we do that? The first thing we have to do is to define and understand what your needs before you do anything, and you need to determine your ideal supplier. And by ideal supplier, let me give you an example. So you may want to purchase watches out of China, and their watches manufacturer are dime a dozen. They're all over. Another person may want to purchase watches as well. But you may be very specific in that you want to purchase watches with Brazilian leather bands. But the manufacturer that you have targeted, they don't produce watches with that. But all you have on your document, should you even write it down, because some of us are not, we are just not like that. I just want a manufacturer that's producing watches. I want to know what the price is. I want to know how quickly I can get it here and what are your payment terms. That's it most of the times, especially when we're doing things online. But I will encourage you to actually take some time and write down what that supplier is supposed to look like. And then you're going to be utilizing that sort of profile of that supplier in order for you to find who you are looking for. So it narrows the pool of suppliers. I'm sure some of you would have gone on Alibaba knowing what you want, and then you just start sending out emails to multiple suppliers. And then all of a sudden, all of these different Chinese agents working for, whether it's trading companies, manufacturers, hopefully just begin to respond to you. And then all of a sudden you're overwhelmed because you're getting all of these responses. And then how do you narrow down these suppliers? What is your method? What are you utilizing to do that? Is it by price? Is it by, if quality fits in there? I would love to know what your standard would be for quality and how you are deriving that if you're sitting at your computer having not been able to touch, feel, or get any other type of information from the supplier. But with all of that said, and as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about finding suppliers. Let me just run through the couple of slides that treats with this, and hopefully you would be able to either implement or adjust what you are currently doing as it pertains to finding suppliers online. So you review your website or brochures from your list of potential suppliers against the attributes of your ideal supplier. And then basically what you can do is to create 3 piles. A no way, these people don't work, a maybe pile, and a looks good pile. Now, what I would normally tell clients if they go through the process is that if you have maybes, I would put maybes with no ways, because I don't think they're gonna be good enough. That's why you said, you know, they're maybe. But moving on, in terms of finding the right supplier, whatever it is you are looking at purchasing, you need to ensure you have detailed product specifications. And I repeat myself, detailed product specifications. You have to know what you want. You don't leave it up to the Chinese manufacturer to tell you what it is you want. You have to know what it is you want at the end of the day. So you prepare your detailed product specifications. You build your template for your request for quotation, because all of this is what it is leading up to. You need to obtain quotations from the suppliers that you have decided that you're going to send out information to. And you haven't made contact with them up at this point. You just looked online, you found some, you've taken notes of the ones that you want to get in touch with. And you are sort of building a sort of list in order for you to submit your product specifications. So once you have the specifications ready, you have your templates for your request for quotations. You can then go ahead and contact these suppliers that you would have seen online or wherever it is, and you can send it to them to provide you with the necessary quotation. You will need to include in that detailed product specifications, what is your quality levels? What are you looking for? Yeah, and I would encourage you to actually utilize a system where you're able to narrow down the top 2 or 3 suppliers, not just based on pricing, but on the non-price attributes. And some of that is going to include their delivery times. How soon can you get the product? You want to know what is their payment terms. You want to know if they are able to procure, if they cannot procure the relevant material, if you have another material, if they will be able to do that in order to produce the product. Do they ship directly? Are they involved in foreign trade? Are they shipping? Which port are they shipping from? And all of these things, you need to have all of that down there. But even before that, hopefully you would have worked out what your pricing is, what kind of pricing that you're looking for, so that you can then, at the end of the day. On finding a good factory, let's say you're able to find that factory. The next step is that you have to actually sign to have a signed agreement with that factory in terms of going forward. And this is not just if you are producing or manufacturing a product. This is if you are just importing a product from off the shelf. You do not do business in China without signing a PO, have a purchase order contract in English and in Chinese. Yeah, and I'm going to get a little bit more information. I'll give you a little bit more information about that in a little while. Right? The Chinese company has to agree not to use the information that you have provided. Let's say you are producing a product for the first time and you have IPR issues. It's under OEM. A typical, just to let you know, a typical NDA as we know it does not work in the Chinese market. You cannot just decide a non-disclosure agreement is going to work. That does not work. You need to have a contract in place that is written in Chinese, produced by a Chinese lawyer in China as well, so that if there are any issues, you can then go to the Chinese court to to see what you can actually recover at the end of the day. And in most instances, it's a China-centric NNN agreement that needs to be done. And this is in no way cheap, but it's a non-use, non-disclosure, non-circumvention agreement. And yet you can search online for an NNN agreement. You would get a lot of information as to what is involved. But at a very, very basic level, in terms of importing your goods, in terms of finding the supplier to produce your product, you need to ensure you have a bilingual purchasing order contract in place. Yes, I hope everybody understands that. Once you have narrowed down your suppliers now, and again, all this is part of the quality control. You have agreed that this is the factory that you are going to utilize to purchase your product or to import your product from. You need to conduct some due diligence, and the first thing that you would normally do is to conduct a supplier audit qualification or a factory. Very, very important, whether, as I said, you're importing for the first time or you're accustomed to doing business in China, but you're looking to reach out to a new supplier for another product. Please, I beg you, take the necessary precaution and have a simple factory audit done, as what we call a supplier qualification audit. What that entails is that you get an inspector from a third-party inspection firm to actually go to visit the factory on the ground, speak to the export development manager, walk through the factory. They will have an ISO 9000 checklist that they need to go through. For some of the inspection companies, they can actually check and verify the bank account numbers once the factory is willing to provide you with that information. They are able to go in there and actually to verify the banking details, because that's a big part of you wanting to do business in China. You need to ensure that whoever you're paying that money to, whoever you're wiring that money to, is who they say that they are. And normally, one of the things that you need to, one of the steps would be, is that if you're wiring the money, you will already have the factory address. Ensure that the address on the wire transfer details is the same address, the same company name, in addition to not just the address, the same company's name on the company information that you have received from the company. Yeah. So, but you need to know that you need to ensure that the company is legitimate. You need to ensure, as I said very early on in this presentation, not everyone who produces products on the ground in China has an exporter license, meaning that they cannot export goods. When they produce it, it has to go through some other means to do so. So your factory audits are very, very important. And then, of course, operational audits or due diligence. You're checking in the background. Ask them for references from other companies as well. One of the ways that you conduct a factory audit as well, and let me just circle back to number one. In order for the audit to be actually done at the factory of your choice, having now selected your preferred supplier, your preferred supplier has to give the inspection company approval to come in there to do it. When you advise the factory that they have been selected as your preferred supplier, and you now want to conduct an audit, and they tell you that they're unable to do that, or don't come out and actually say that, but start beating around the bush and not giving you any information, run far, really far. Because any factory that's worth their salt will allow an inspection to be done in their place of operation. Okay, there are a lot of red flags. I don't have time now to go through what you receive in terms of the factory audit reports and all the different questions and answers as it pertains to the audit and so on. It's a pretty involved process, but at the end of the day, you know for sure that your products are being manufactured by a legitimate supplier at the end of the day. Okay, as I said before, you need to ask for references. Any supplier that is not willing to give you any happy client references, well, then again, that's a red flag for you. Sometimes, as I said, these are the things that we don't actually consider. You need to confirm that you have the right to visit the production line and check. And this is not necessarily you. It's, let's say you have an agent on the ground that's working for you. And of course, one of the big things, especially if you're manufacturing raw materials for your manufacturing process or raw material inputs or whatever type of product, you need to get an understanding of what their quality control manual is. Now, in most factories, just to let you know, they're going to tell you, well, you don't need to send anyone to do quality control, meaning your pre-shipment inspection at the end of the production process before they actually ship the goods. That's not good enough, because that their quality control process and the quality control process that you would implement via either your agent on the ground or their third-party inspector is not going to be the same quality control inspection process. And you need to be sure that at the end of the day, the goods that are produced are according to an international standard or meeting at the very basic level your specific requirements as it pertains to your product. Yeah, because, and as I keep saying to clients, if you don't get it right at this level, when those products arrive in your country of destination, be it Trinidad or wherever, and it's not up to standard, then what are you going to do to that with that container of goods or whatever it is that comes to you? You cannot ship it back. So take the precautions up front along the process and do what you have to do and get it right. So just to summarize in terms of the evaluating suppliers here, so we recognize the need for the supplier selection based on the basic five-step process I showed you from the get-go as we begin to delve into finding the right suppliers. Identify your key sourcing requirements. You need a sourcing strategy. Ensure you have that organize, identify your potential supply sources, limit your suppliers in terms of your selection pool. Then you reach out to them, and then based on the information that's coming back, then you're able to make a determination as to which suppliers you're going after. Ensure as well, and especially in these times, more so than ever than before, that you are looking at not just one supplier to produce your product, but make sure you have a backup supplier. As I've said before, Chinese factories start today and some of them are gone tomorrow. And you are all the way on the other side of the world. You need to, and you don't have someone on the ground working for you, you're going to be in a lot of problems. Yeah, so look at it as simply a diversification strategy as you go forward in terms of your sourcing. Okay, we are getting on to just a little after 10 at this point. And I just want to touch a bit on the minimum order quantities. Always something that's, that pops up. People are not sure, or they approach us and they say, well, you know, I'm calling you to find out about your process, but you know, but online they said I can get 500 pieces. You have not conducted any due diligence to say that, yes, when you place an order, you will get 500 pieces. You don't know if that factory is a factory in the first place, or who you are speaking to. But in most instances, the model in terms of China is low price, high volume levels. I'm not saying by no means that you cannot get small quantities. Yes, you can. And I'm also not saying that manufacturers do not produce small quantities. Yes, they can. But sometimes if you must be aware as well that if the manufacturer is producing smaller quantities, you need to look at quality levels, because you can get a smaller quantity, but is the quality level of the product going to be what it needs to be, and it would be able to stand up to scrutiny? So you need to keep that in mind, and that is across all sectors. Negotiating for smaller minimum order MOQs is pretty easy if you have a reliable partner on the ground who has preferential relationships that already exist in terms of their supplier network on the ground. The manufacturer will bend over backwards for them. But at the end of the day, you also need to understand that the minimum order quantities that the supplier is saying that he needs is also dependent on the fact that his raw materials may not necessarily be produced by him. He has to get raw materials from another supplier who also have minimum order quantities. So he is also working there in terms of trying to ensure he meets his suppliers' requirements. And then, of course, you have to meet his. And then, of course, it's a low margin sort of scenario in terms of sourcing in China with, among manufacturers. So you just need to be mindful of that. I'm not saying that it is not available. Of course it is, most definitely. And many of us do receive such. And some people have had great wins actually getting manufacturers online to provide them with such. But it's not very easy to do so. And again, but you always have to take into consideration the minimum order quantity versus the quality of the product. And that, of course, the power is always in your hands in terms of the decisions that you are going to make. Yeah. If you're looking from a manufacturing perspective and you're looking at lower minimum order quantities, take into consideration if you want to lower the minimum order quantities, then what you need to do is to look at your standard components. You need to look at the components of the product that you're producing and ensure that you are actually using raw materials that are standard, in that the cost of the raw materials are not too high. And then, of course, as I said, you can consider working with smaller manufacturers. You just need to be able to find them. And then you can, of course, negotiate based on how often you would be turning around. Do it have sales turnover as it pertains to ordering from them in China? It becomes part of your procurement for your business. And of course, again, you can purchase from middlemen like trading companies, or utilize a sourcing agent to try and get the minimum order quantities sorted out. Okay. At this juncture, did I pass a poll? Right. At this juncture, I want to just look at negotiations in China. The rules in China as it pertains to negotiations is a lot different. At this juncture, you already have, I would think, a short list of companies that you're looking to do business with. You have actually looking at selecting your supplier, but you want to be able to negotiate successfully. Different industries in China have different margins, and sometimes even within the same industry, the supplier quotes will be like high one way and then low in others. So I'm sorry to say that there is no such formula as it pertains to negotiation. Like if they say 100, you say 50, and you sort of split the difference. That is not how it works. Again, it comes down to the type of relationship that you want to have with the supplier, and the supplier also is looking to get to know you. Now, I must put on the table that there are suppliers, and when I say suppliers, it's suppliers / manufacturers or factories I'm referring to, that are not willing to deal with English clients. They prefer to deal with locals. So you could just keep that at the back of your mind sometimes. But you do find suppliers who are willing to listen. And a lot of the times, if you're purchasing online, it's going to be that salesperson that you would be in contact with. You will have their WeChat number, their WhatsApp number, their email, and they will just continue. Once you express interest, they'll just keep coming back at you and coming back at you and coming back at you for you to make a decision on the spot. Bearing everything that I have said before, you need to be very careful when you get to this level in terms of negotiating. Suppliers have a very good sense of what's the going price of a given product is in China, and they know what their competition is offering as well. So take your time. Do not be pushed or feel as if you need to be hurried in any way to make a decision. If it is not working out for you, I can tell you that there is a supplier in China for you. China is a massive market, and you will find a supplier who who you can get to deal with to give you your term, to work on your terms with respect to your products. Just to tell you, you need to be realistic in terms of your negotiations and understand that you are developing a relationship and one that needs to be nurtured. Yeah, one that needs to be nurtured. Negotiations with several factories is wise. Do not just select a factory and just continue going down the road with this factory. If you are at that point where you have the top 3 suppliers from your list haven't gone through your due diligence, it is best for you now at that point to be talking to these 3, or I wouldn't even say 3, maybe 2 suppliers, and trying to see, excuse me, where you can get a win-win at the end of the day. So, and you can, what you can do is set up a very simple spreadsheet looking at what it is, not even spreadsheet, just a table looking at what each supplier is providing to you. And then you match that up with your detailed specifications, and then you'd be able to see, okay, while I'm getting a better price with supplier A, it takes a longer time for me to actually get the product. So supplier A is giving me a great price, but it's taking him 6 weeks to produce the product versus supplier B, who is giving me a slightly higher price, but he's going to take 4 weeks to produce the product. And all of that is highly dependent on where you are in terms of your business and what your needs are. So as you can see, it is not a very simple process, but it is one that you should go through and should experience, because this will not be the first or last time that you're doing business with a Chinese manufacturer. Yeah. So I would say take your time. If you need help, you really should try and get a partner on the ground that you can work with who can help you negotiate the terms and conditions. I can give you just a very quick example. Back in 2015, our company took one of the largest conglomerates in the Caribbean. We took the executive team to China on a 9-day mission. And we also provided translation services. We set up all the B2B meetings for them prior, and we were on the ground in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, going to meetings, going to showrooms, and whatever it is. And we go in, we do the introductions and so on. And at the end of each meeting, we had a debriefing. And the leader of the team, actually, one of the points that was raised during the debriefing is that they said, well, you know, this particular company, which is one of the big ones out of all that we have visited that day, they said, but we want to do business with them, and I think that they're ready to do business with us. So that is what she actually heard. But in the debriefing, in terms of which our Chinese translators now said to her, well, no, that's not what you heard, because they do not want to do business with such a small company. You're talking about turning around two containers. They're accustomed to turning around 20 containers per week, and that's 2040 HQ. So you can get lost. The conversation can be going in one direction when you're talking to them in English, but yet when your agent comes in with who is a local, they get a different spin in terms of what's happening, and that goes in terms of their cultural differences on the ground, and you know how best you're able to negotiate for yourself and for your business at that point in time. So be very careful in terms of your negotiation. Make sure it's what it is you want. You achieve what it is you want for you and your business at the end of the day. And please remember always, the Chinese is all about relationships. I can't say that enough. And we move on now in terms of now production and management and quality control. You need to pick a factory that is the right size for your order. Could be difficult because, as I said before, it's all about you know, low margins but high volumes for the Chinese manufacturers. But at the end of the day, if you take the time, you identify your ideal supplier, you look at your listing, you shortlist, you do everything in terms of your due diligence, you should be able to find the right factory to produce your product. And you need to communicate with your suppliers on a regular basis. As I said initially as well, this is not Amazon. You don't click and wait for the package to arrive. Okay, you really need to be communicating with them on an ongoing basis to ensure that they are producing the product according to spec, that they are on time in terms of delivery. If you need to, if you do not hire an agent, if you do not hire someone to assist you on the ground before the goods leave the factory, I would suggest that you actually hire a third-party inspection company to actually do an inspection at the factory prior to the packing of the container, the shipping of the goods out of China. They will send you a report, and then you would be able to give approval, depending on what the defects margins are, and whether or not all the goods are produced according to your specific requirements. So, and that is part of your quality control. I would implore you that you do not allow your goods to leave China without a pre-shipment inspection. I know if you're coming through us as a company, certainly that is not something that happens. Everything that leaves China must go through a pre-shipment inspection process at the factory prior to shipping. If you do have an opportunity to be in China, you will want to actually visit your factory so they put a face to who they are dealing with. And of course, that strengthens the relationship going forward. Take time to understand the production process of your supplier. Define what your key milestones are, develop a production strategy with this process, because what you may have in mind in terms of production process may not necessarily be the way or the workflow that happens at the supplier itself. So you would want to ensure you have proper understanding with regard to that, and ensure that the factory is adhering to milestones. Furthermore, you need to ensure that all of this that I'm mentioning here is detailed within the contract that you have with the factory, especially as it pertains to the milestones and so on. Because should anything go wrong, that is where your redress comes at the end of the day. Because the supplier says, well, you didn't tell us what level of quality we are looking for. You didn't tell us what where we needed to be at whatever particular time. If they pushed your products back in order to produce somebody else's own, you're not even going to know that. You will just get a note saying, well, the production time has now been increased by 6 weeks. Yeah. So you need to be monitoring almost, well, for us it's daily, but I mean, you need to be monitoring what's taking place. Ongoing involvement is a big part of building your relationship. And as I said before, we are looking at conducting pre-shipment inspections before your goods actually leave China. And that includes goods that is being purchased. When I say off the shelf, whether it's wholesalers or whoever you are purchasing from, but if you're purchasing a container of goods, you really should invest in ensuring that those goods are inspected so that when your shipment arrives, everything is in order. And at this juncture, we just want to introduce our second poll and our final poll for this morning's webinar. Having just dealt with quality control, we just wanted to get an idea as to whether quality control is if that is one of your biggest fears when doing business in China. Okay, all right. So I'm seeing here that 43 out of the total number of participants, which is just about half of the person, says that quality control is one of their major fears in terms of doing business in China. And just about 6% said no, it is not. It is, and to let you know, quality coming out of China, as I said, is really a fear for many, and rightfully so. You have a right to be fearful. You have a right to be cautious. As I said many times already during this morning's webinar, that if you do not have the collaboration on the ground in China, it is very difficult for you to be sure of the quality that you're getting in terms of your product. If you have an opportunity to get a test order done, I would encourage you to do that before you place your full order or run your production for mass production to be done. Very, very, very important. Take into consideration the audits that we would have mentioned as it pertains to the factory that you may be using. So and just to reiterate again, in terms of your quality control measures, conduct your supplier qualification audits. As a new importer in the market, having identified your preferred supplier, I would encourage you to undertake this audit so that you feel comfortable that you are working with a legitimate partner, someone that you can actually grow your business with. And even if you don't want to take it that far, but you must feel comfortable that you are you're working with someone who is, legitimate, as I said, has the export capability, has the production capacity to produce your product as well, has an export license, is involved in foreign trade. Their bankers are noteworthy in terms of receiving monies, ensuring that they have, they're willing to accept inspection on their premises at a given notice. They're willing to share their clients' testimonials with you and so on, so that you can feel comfortable that you are working with someone that's trustworthy. Some companies, larger ones, most of the time, they would actually go so far as undertaking the DPIs, ensuring that the DPIs are involved during production inspection is involved during the production process. And of course, I spoke about the pre-shipment inspection. So you're filling a container, let's say with office chairs. Yeah, you would want once all of the chairs have been completed, or at least 80% of the order has been fulfilled, you should you should get a pre-shipment inspection done so that you can come in and test what is being produced for you to ensure that you are getting the required quality standard that is necessary. Sometimes you need a pressure test. You need to have measurements to ensure that what they say to you that you are getting in terms of size, in terms of range, you're actually getting it. It is really, really important. And if you want to go even further, you can have your inspector on standby when that container is being filled to ensure that it is packed according to your requirements so that there is no damage to your goods while it is to your destination at the end of the day. Okay, so just a quick few. I needed to put this talk about Chinese holidays, and I'll do so just briefly. So because it is, once you're doing business in China, is something that you cannot escape. The biggest Chinese holiday is CNY, the Chinese New Year holiday that comes up at the end of January every year, end of January going into February. China basically shuts down. You need to plan for this. You need to ensure that your supply chain is working months in advance. You're taking all of this into account, because during that time when suppliers and agents are hustling to get goods out of China, that's the time that a lot of stuff goes wrong. The wrong items comes in the container. You have, the product is not produced according to spec, and it gets out there, and it's just a level of craziness. So some parts came and some did not. So when it arrived, there was no, you're missing half of the order and all of these sorts of things, if it gets there at all in some instances. So the Chinese holidays, and there are several during the year. You have the Golden Week, you have Tung's, I can't remember the name of the Tung's Day holiday that just passed, and there's a lot that's coming up. April, October, May, but as I said, the largest one is the Chinese New Year, where China shuts down for. Normally what they will tell you, it's just about over just close to 10 days, but really and truly it runs almost a month. And what happens during that period is that the labor force in China takes the opportunity to change jobs. So sometimes when the factory reopens, the persons the staff that was working on your product is no longer there. That means a delay for you. It means also possibly quality issues as well. So plan for each major holiday. Be on point when you're looking at your supply chain. Ensure that your quality management your quality management is in placing you ensure that you have quality management in terms of placing your goods and start very early. I just wanted to ensure that that information is there. So now we're coming close to the end of the presentation. Just a couple more slides as we go to 10:30. I know you have quite a bit of questions, but I just wanted to touch in terms of placing your order at this juncture. Key specifications and terms are negotiated and are clearly stated. Right, sorry about that. Yeah, so key specifications and terms are clearly negotiated. Your contract should be written, as I said before. You should have a bilingual PO in place, both in Chinese and in English as well. Chinese contracts are normally signed with using a chop, or which is really just a stamp or a seal that is placed on the contract. Yes. Just to and ensure in terms of your payment terms, what the payment terms involve. When do you make that second payment? Sometimes you have instances where payment is required up front, or the full 100% is required up front, and that is not novel, especially in terms of a first-time order from a supplier who you have never done business with. However, that in itself is you need to be very wary of it. Talk to the supplier to find out why you need to make that full payment, to make sure you have a clear understanding. And additionally, we have had to try and help persons, companies, and these are big companies, small companies, individual entrepreneurs, whatever it is. The company has said to you, you need to make your 30% deposits to get the order going. And you decided that you will send the full 100% payment because you think that you should not pay for two wire transfers. A wire transfer in any bank in TT dollars is $65. And then you pay, if it's over 20 US, depending on if it's over 2,000 US that you're sending, you add an additional 20 US for the fees, the intermediary bank fees. But you decided that you would send all of that money one time, and then you are either scammed or you were very inexperienced, and you do not get the goods. Something goes awry, but you have paid all the money already. What are you going to do? Let's be smart in terms of how we deal with the payment side of things, and as well as in terms of placing your orders. So be very, very clear and very detailed within your PO contract or your contract agreement with your contract with them as to how that is going to be worked out. Yeah, if anything happens, the reason why it needs to be in Chinese, I think I mentioned this earlier, in order for you to have any level of arbitration to court or whatever it is, they need the contract to be in Chinese. So you need it, as I said, both in Chinese and in English for yourself. And just moving now in terms of shipping of the products, I spoke quite a bit under when we dealt with COVID in terms of what's happening now as it pertains to shipping of goods. But you would need to recruit a freight forwarder I'm seeing large operations in China. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but one that is doing widespread business, and that can certainly assist you should you have any problems. Get your quotation from them and negotiate your terms with your shipper, and try again in this regard to establish a relationship. There's so many companies locally, I'm sure. And I mean, Trinidad is a small place. You would be able to touch base with someone who can guide you accordingly, yeah, as opposed to paying for them upfront. All right, so we're just coming down to the end now, and we are looking here at resolving disputes when they arrive. And we'll go back again to the signing of the bilingual contract, which will clearly define the acceptable quality levels. As well, the seller name on the contract matches the receiver of the payments. Very, very important for you. With so many trading companies out there, it is a common mistake to have a contract with a supplier, but pay a trading company. And you need to be mindful of that. Your supplier has a physical and financial assets, meaning a small one-man band, and he may very well disappear with your money. That's not unheard of. That has happened to several persons right here in Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. the jurisdiction on the contract matches the location of the supplier's assets at a country level. Very, very important. If you have to go to courts and it reached to that point where the supplier just absconds, he's gone, he's out of the picture, then that's, it's just then all a mess at that point. And that's why you're going to be taking your time from the get-go to try and choose the right supplier for your business. So it doesn't have to get to this point, but even if it does, you have the necessary documentation in place where you can go to the end, which means you get to court to resolve the issue. First step is to define the damage and put a value on the cost to repair or replace. And then your second step is to negotiate with your supplier on your own. In most instances, I can tell you, suppliers are very willing if a mistake was made in the first order, most of the times, because they want to maintain the relationship, they want business, they would send, they can actually send to you extra product in your next container. They can also send you, if it's parts or whatever it is, they feel free to send you additional parts. As well, they can also look at compensation in terms of reducing, giving you a voucher, a reduction in your next bill as it pertains to your sales, and so on. Again, it depends on the relationship, but more than that, most of the times, the supplier, once it's any supplier worthy of its salt, it's going to be willing to negotiate with you. You can also look at bringing in a third party that can help to facilitate your dispute resolution. If you're doing business in China, it's always good to know that there is a Chinese lawyer on the ground that you could actually reach out to that can help you in terms of your dispute resolution and getting things done properly. And that brings us to the end of the presentation at this morning in terms of the webinar. There is so much I would love to have shared, but of course, you can see almost a lot of the points that was raised. You can actually spend the webinar on each one of them, just so you to get a bit more of an understanding as you seek to do business in China and in Asia. A lot of what I've said is not just for the Chinese market, it is applicable across other Asian countries as well. So you can feel free to utilize the information in that regard. I do hope that this was very helpful, at least at the very beginning, and that you will leave here with some tools that you can apply right away to your China sourcing processes. So thank you again, and this is the question and answer time.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I believe we are running according to schedule. We have a number of questions here from our participants, and we will start with one of the questions from Leonard. Michelle, how does China's new digital currency play with payments in the near future?
It's certainly something that is being talked about, and it hasn't, I will be honest with you, it is not something that we have treated with at all. It was something we were looking at before COVID came into the picture. But it certainly is going to play a crucial role in the way that China does business going forward. I know that there is a big cryptocurrency movement and in addition to blockchain technology taking place in China at the moment. But I can't really give you a definite answer for that at this point. And I'm really sorry. I'll have to do some more research on the ground, as well as talk to my team as to how that is moving. As I said, right now it's pretty crazy in terms of the medical situation and from a manufacturing perspective. So if that person, if you can send me that question, and I can actually provide a more in-depth answer to that person, I have no problem doing so.
Certainly, Michelle. As a matter of fact, we will be providing the questions.
Sure.
Second question, also from Leonard. USA commercial differences with China decreased imports from America. What products in Trinidad do you identify as ideal for exporting to China to fill the gap left by American-based companies? Also, in addition to that, based on your experience, what are the most common products imported from China to Trinidad?
I'll take the second part of the question first. Some of the most common products imported would be, you would look at shoes and more from a fashion perspective, a lot of fashion jewelry, a lot of shoes, clothing. You have persons in the construction sector in terms of your doors, your windows, any kind of construction material, steel. It's so wide ranging. It's amazing because Trinidadians will, they will import whatever their needs are. But based on our experience, and now people are even looking at agricultural tools, small agricultural tools, and as well as automated machines to make, if you're involved in the natural foods sector, you're looking at bringing in equipment, automated equipment that can help you in terms of your processing from an agro-processing perspective. That is big right now in terms of helping persons to fast track their agro-processing, the process itself. It's so many things. Of course, right now it's about the medical. Everything is about the medical products. We have done. I can tell you, you can do customize if you are involved in the veterinarian pet sector. You can do customize. You can customize your own products. There's so much that's happening in terms of private labeling. Everybody wants to get their branding on the products that they're producing, and this is not just for Trinidad. This is across the Caribbean. But it's a whole gamut of products. Basically, it's everywhere. What was the first part of the question again? Please remind me. Something about if America, the gap that Americans have left.
USA commercial differences with China decreased imports from America. What Trinidad do you identify as ideal for exporting to China to fill the gap left by American-based companies?
I would not even go so far to say to fill the gap left by American companies, because we have been looking at exports from here, from in the region. Basically, we have been approached. We've been talking to the Barbados Investment Development Corporation, specifically as it pertains to exports. But we have to look at what we are good at in terms of producing. And there are certain sectors that we have not done a lot of work in. It's specifically, I know before COVID, if you look at this from the services sector perspective, we, in terms of our, English to Chinese to English students, in terms of from an educational perspective, that is something that is being looked at in other Caribbean countries at the moment. We also have, in terms of exporting, we could also look at our cocoa, our chocolates, as well. The Chinese, the middle income Chinese person has a very high disposable income. They're always looking for products that are natural, that are organic, that and that and you also have a premium price on. So our cocoa and our chocolates is also something that we could look at exporting, and we have been looking at it. Honey, especially from, not necessarily from Grenada. I can only speak from who we have been approached by, from not from Trinidad, but from Grenada, in terms of exporting to China. So those are some of the sectors that I can look at. As I said, I can't necessarily look from the gap that America has left, but I know from us, in terms of what we produce, those are some of the things that we can export to China. Bearing in mind that every time you think about exporting to China from this part of the world, one of the first things people are going to be talking about is the cost of transportation, and how that could actually outweigh the actual cost of the product as well. But as I keep saying to some, we don't necessarily have to transport the product. We can have a factory in China produce the product on our behalf as well. We can license it, but that's a whole other conversation.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Our next set of questions are from Joseph Peltier, who advised us that he had to leave to attend a funeral, but I see he's back. Joseph, please accept our condolences. Are there opportunities for joint venture investments and reciprocal trade, and based on a colleague's experience, delivery of non-functional equipment with no traceability? So it's the question, is there due diligence for small manufacturers and businesses?
If there's due diligence for small manufacturers, of course, there always is due diligence for small manufacturers and businesses. Actually, that's one of the ways that we can get into the Chinese markets in terms of linking with a local factory underground, or if we do have the capitalization to actually set up our own factory in China. But certainly there is a lot of interest in terms of joint ventures. Because you cannot, as a Trinidadian company, I shouldn't say cannot. In most instances, you can't just decide today that I'm getting involved in the Chinese market tomorrow. But there certainly are a lot of options, yes, in terms of small businesses doing business in China from an export perspective, as well as operating from within the Chinese market itself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think you've answered his next question, which was, so if some factories do not have export license or experience, why do they export? Why not collaborate with a reputable exporter and those with experience? So I think that. And
Okay.
his next question, also from Joseph, higher prices for the goods may impact your profitability. Why not collaborate with another company that produces similar products?
Of course, and that is left to the business. You can collaborate with another company, and you can consolidate your shipments, save yourself money in terms of even conducting your due diligence by utilizing the same supplier, and just reduce your cost overall. I always tell people, if you're going into the Chinese market and you cannot have savings of at least 20%, then China is not the market for you, or Asia on its own. You need to start somewhere else before you get involved in that market. So that's a great question, and I applaud that at this point, most definitely.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Our next questions come from Joanna. Small business interested in sourcing small to medium quantity items. How do I get away from high shipping costs?
The only way, not the only way, one of the ways you get away from high shipping costs, you already said small businesses. You need to, and it just sort of follow through from what it is, the last question. You would need to have some level of collaboration with other small businesses who maybe are interested in purchasing similar products to what you are purchasing, or in purchasing around the same time that you do, in order for you to consolidate your shipments so that you're able to reduce your shipping costs at the end of the day. But remember, during this time, at this juncture, based on what's happening with the pandemic, shipping costs is very, very fluid. And that's both for ocean as well as air at this point. So if you are able to consolidate, if you are able to bring a couple small businesses together who are interested in sourcing, and you don't have to necessarily be sourcing the same thing, but you are able to get a freight forwarder to bring all of the products from the various persons together and consolidate the shipment, then it's going to be easier for you. Now, that is not as easy as it sounds, but it is something that can be done to reduce your costs.
Thank you, Michelle. Also from Joanna, will you be able to provide us with sourcing agencies or persons on the ground in China?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, Deborah?
Certainly. Will you be able to provide us with sourcing agencies or persons on the ground in China?
That's a strange question. Actually, I guess we can assist in terms of providing you with information. However, we can provide you with maybe possibly some information, but to actually say utilize this particular company or this particular person, I don't think our company would want to take a stand in that regard. But we may be able to direct you at this point.
Thank you, Michelle. Next question. What if my product arrives and does not match the quality of the samples sent? Also, is there a time limit in which I can make a claim?
Okay. And that is just to answer the question. If your product arrives and it's not the same quality as your samples, I think I went through in detail concerning pre-shipment inspections. Pre-shipment, getting your products inspected prior to it leaving China, before it is shipped to come here. That is the safest way for you to ensure that what you paid for, what you are going to receive, because at that point in time, you will be able to, the inspector is going to say that this is not meeting your specific requirements or your detailed specifications as it pertains to the product. Because when it arrives here, there's nothing that you can do. I mean, when I say nothing, if you start a process of trying to get some level of redress, it's going to take months. You know, the Chinese supplier could tie you up for a long time. Worse if it has to go to court. So ensure that your quality checks are in place. Ensure all of that is being done prior to the goods leaving China.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next question from Fanta Pear Sandy. When a COA is obtained for your product, can it be used generally? And how do you treat with obtaining a patent for your product? Should your product be manufactured in China?
Okay. Let me just take the second half of the question in terms of your patent, the product being manufactured. Now, obtaining a patent is one thing. Manufacturing the product in China is another thing. Because what I know what we have had is that we have manufacturers who have obtained patents for the UK, Canada, and some countries in Europe, but the actual production is taking place in the Chinese markets. If that is maybe what the question is about, then what you need to do is to ensure that an NNN agreement is signed with the manufacturer who is actually going to produce the product for you on the ground in China. Yes, that NNN agreement normally would cost you upwards of 6,000 US dollars to ensure that that agreement is sound, because that agreement, when it's produced by, it's a bilingual agreement produced by a Chinese attorney, signed by both parties, ensuring that the manufacturer cannot reproduce your product at all, and there's a non-compete clause as well to ensure that you are taken care of. If you are looking now at a getting a patent done for the Chinese markets, then you have to go through again getting in touch with a Chinese legal firm on the ground to go through that process on the ground for you to ensure that your patent, that you can receive the patent. And I believe that the China government recently changed the laws as it pertains to patent development when coming to the Chinese markets. So in itself, so that's a legal process. If you're interested in getting more information, we can actually connect you with an attorney for you to obtain some more information as it pertains to getting the patent for the market, for the Chinese markets. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. Our next two questions come from Patrice Ramkaran. For direct dealing, what platform do you recommend to contact manufacturers or suppliers? And the second question, what is the recommended best practice for sourcing from China?
Okay, so for direct dealing, which platform do I recommend? Basically, it depends on the products that you are looking to source. But if you're looking at manufacturers, then Alibaba and global sources are going to be the two that I would put out there. All your due diligence needs to take place, regardless of which platform. If you are looking at sourcing products in smaller quantities off the shelf, one of the platforms that you can use is actually AliExpress, because it's smaller quantities. Most of the times it's actually products that are, left over. Your manufacturers produce products and they have extras, so it's being sold on that platform. But again, your due diligence needs to be in place. So in terms of the first part of the question, globalsources.com is there, Alibaba is there. Again, not everyone that has a seal, a gold seal on Alibaba that tells you that they are a manufacturer of this particular standard, that is a seal that is purchased. You have no guarantee that Alibaba staff visited a factory, went in there, ensure the location, ensure that the factory is who they are, legitimize them, or anything like that. But your due diligence needs to be done. And that brings us, I guess, to her question where she referred to what are the best practices as it pertains to sourcing. Well, the best practices, Patrice, is exactly what I went through in the presentation. If you are getting and working with a sourcing agency or anyone that is good at salt, those are the different standards and systems that they're going to utilize to ensure that you get what it is you want at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. Our next question comes from Sandra Mondro. Are there any paper board suppliers that you can recommend?
Paper or board suppliers?
Paper board.
Or paper board. Okay. All right. I don't have that off the top of my head, but most likely we should be able to recommend a few. However, this would not be suppliers that we would necessarily have gone out and do our due diligence in terms of our supplier qualification audit for. So should just bear that in mind. If we do have that in our database, having worked with them previously, no problem sharing. But not everyone is going to be, along that category where that due diligence was done. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next question comes from Hans Persad. Does INVENI offer an SGS type service?
SGS type services, when you say SGS, are you referring to SGS certification as it pertains to chemical manufacturing and its importation? Is Mr. Persad there? I just want to make sure I understand.
Mr. Persad,
can you hear me?
Clarify?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Persad.
Okay, I'm trying to ease pain. So therefore, I want to be able to be at ease after I've placed my order.
Of course, yes. Okay. I'm not. Deborah?
I'm not sure. I believe he.
No, I'm on. I'm on. I'm here.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Persad?
Yeah.
Can you're asking about the SGS certification?
Yeah, I will have received, say, a sample, and my supplier wants money up front. But when I receive the goods don't match the samples which I have received, so I will have lost a substantial amount of money.
Oh my God. Okay.
So no, this is not for real. I'm just saying what I'm trying to avoid.
Oh, you're trying to avoid the pain. Okay.
Yes, it's pain avoidance.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering if your company locally will help in this regard.
Yes, we can. Most definitely. Our inspection services, right from Trinidad, it's done over 13 countries in Asia. and we work with one of the largest inspection companies in Asia. So yes, we can afford SGS certification is not a problem. ISO 1000 and ISO 9000 compliance, EU compliance, US. Yeah, that we can have that conversation later on.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Mr. Prasad, for clarification. Next question comes from Zeta or Zeta. Are there Chinese translation services acknowledged by local Chinese embassy to assist with vetting bilingual contracts?
Ah, interesting. And she's asking it from the point of view that the translation services are available in Trinidad for vetting Chinese contracts. I assume that's what I'm getting from it, right? Okay, so in terms of Chinese translation services, you can reach out to, and I had to, I assisted someone, pointed someone in the right direction even this week on Monday. You can reach out to the Confucius Institute attached to UE to get assistance there in terms of a translator. What I did this week is I directed someone to the Chinese embassy in Sinclair. So they were able to help. Normally for translation services, it's charged by per page in terms of the translation, but the Chinese embassy was able to help that person over the phone almost immediately with a 3-page contract document. So Confucius Institute is currently closed because of the lockdown, but you can reach out to them post this. There is another school that teaches Mandarin. There are individuals as well who would be able to assist you. There are certain schools that actually teach Mandarin locally.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. Our next question comes from Patty Mohan Thompson. With respect to quality control, is there a list of companies which meets these requirements? For example, ISO 9001.
Just making sure I understand, is it that she's referring to if there's a list of what quality control companies?
Yes, is there a list of companies which meets these requirements? For example, 9001.
Okay, no, there is no. We certainly don't have a list of companies that provides the service independently. She would have to do some research on her own with respect to that.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Our next question from M. Meyer. Is it safe to purchase from the stores on AliExpress? How does one determine if a shop on AliExpress is legitimate?
You would follow the same protocols that I would have identified in the presentation earlier in terms of getting, ensuring that they are legitimate. So you make the same requests that I said. You ask for their references. You get copies of their suits, their certificates, their certifications. You get an audit done, a supplier qualification audit to ensure that they are who they say they are and they can operate and they have the export license and all of those things. When we send out the presentation, you would be able to, they can review and be guided accordingly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. Our next question from Tanil Platter. Can you make QC checks and pre-shipment inspection as part of the contract to be shipped?
Well, you can. However, you would want your QC checks to be done independently because you can't really, you should not, I would not advise, I should say, that the factory that is producing your product to conduct your pre-shipment inspection. That is himself verifying himself. So you'd want a third party involved in terms of conducting your inspection on the ground.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Our next question comes from Rhonda M. I'm not sure whether you had addressed this previously. What is your perspective of purchasing through Alibaba?
What is, sorry, something about Alibaba?
What is your perspective of purchasing through Alibaba?
That's a personal. Okay. Alibaba is good for research. Alibaba, I would not utilize Alibaba on its own for purchasing. Nothing is wrong with you utilizing Alibaba or any one of the trade portals to find your suppliers. Once the suppliers are meeting your specific requirements, no problem. But once you identify those suppliers, then I would advise you to conduct a supplier qualification audit before you start doing business with those companies. And that is not unheard of. That is a practice done by both small and large companies. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How does the infrastructure in competing countries, example India and Vietnam, compare to China?
Compared to China? That's
Yes.
a great question. That's a great question. Actually the infrastructure in India and Vietnam is not as great as China. Obviously, China has been building its leadership in export manufacturing over the last 30 years, and they have perfected that model. And so much so, technology and innovation is now included in its delivery with respect to its manufacturing. If in terms of sourcing from India, first you have to understand what are the best products to source out of the Indian market, and normally that is going to be metals. It's going to be metals in terms of, let's say, like jewelry. It's going to be textiles and clothing and that sort of thing. You can doing sourcing there it already happens. However, it's at a slower pace. Getting your quality checks, and so they do not have the gamut of quality control providers as China has. So while you can engage in the process, be prepared for it to take a longer time as well. And I don't have to get into India's services. We know where they are in terms of IT and medical and all of that sort of thing. In terms of Vietnam, if you're looking at sourcing in Vietnam, in Vietnam has increased considerably. Again, of course, Vietnam is a smaller size country. Their infrastructure is now being built as they go. But however, they actually produce 90% of the footwear in the world. So that's where you want to go if you're looking for footwear, if you're looking for also for textiles as well. If you're looking at small electronics as well, you're also going to get it in the Vietnamese market. So it depends on what you want, what you're looking for. You're going to be looking to develop similar type relationships as you would in the Chinese market. But bear in mind, let's say if you want to go into Vietnam and you want to purchase, let's say, agricultural equipment, that may not be the place that I would look to source agricultural equipment. You know, we go there based on where they are making their mark in terms of products, because it tells me that they have the infrastructure is well built up. And it's easy for you to maneuver, and that you can get out and get in and get out pretty easily. Yeah. So those are the things, and they're nowhere near where China is or would be, or regardless of COVID, is still going to be, eons ahead of these other countries. But the countries have an opportunity to certainly create their own niches where that's where you go for X in terms of product development.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. We now have an issue from Fanta Pear Sandy. I have a product that is being manufactured in China. I told them the ingredients that I needed and the make of it. It's of excellent quality and is being sold at present. Last year, they asked me if I could offer it for sale on their website. They said that they would pay me a percentage on any sale. But every time I asked if they sold any, they say they have not. How do I deal with this?
Oh, well, I have to assume he would have signed a contract initially to have the product produced by the company. And then they would have had further discussions, and then an additional contract would have been in place as it pertains to sale of the product on the company's website. Now, that's a little bit dangerous, because I'm getting from this is that the manufacturer who produced the product is now retailing the product on its website. I think that's what I'm getting from what you just said to me, which is a little different. But in term, he has to go back to his contractual arrangements. And does he have any proof at all if it's actually being retailed on their website? Can he see it on the side in terms of their English website? Do they have an English website as well? And this is something I didn't see previously that people need to be aware of. Most Chinese companies, the majority of them, they do have a website in English that you would see, and in Chinese.
Hello? Yes!
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Right.
you, Michelle. I think we have a number of questions remaining. I think we will just take for about another 5 minutes.
Okay.
Our next question comes from OFL NXM1. A potential has asked for payment in advance for the first 2 shipments and directed us to China Export and Credit Insurance, Sinosho, as the recommended financial intermediary. One moment.
Sure.
Is this typical and secure? What are the pros and cons?
Normally for China and moving your product out, it's 30% deposit to start production, at the end of production to be paid, or 50% upfront. 100% upfront, that raises a red flag to me, unless that money is paid and it's being held in escrow, or it's being paid through your agent, where the agent is actually monitoring what is taking place at the factory and is paying the factory in tranches, meaning that same 30% or 50% that I mentioned. Because and whatever contract that you have signed with them must have milestones and delivery points. You can actually just hand over that 100% upfront. In terms of this Sinu that you mentioned, we have never utilized that service. But I expect that the company that has put this forward, it would have done their due diligence and researched the company. One of the things that they can also do as well is actually get information from the Chinese embassy here as it pertains to this particular organization. If it's a bank or so, they need to understand how the processes as it pertains to this particular organization and how they're operating in terms of payment.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next question comes from Karan Ali. Is drop shipping possible with Chinese manufacturers to the Caribbean, or more specifically, Trinidad and Tobago?
Something that I started to explore over 2 years ago. I can't sit here and tell you yes or no, because it's to me something. The drop shipping works well with Amazon, works well in the US, but to actually deploy that here, to me, I can't see how it can actually be operationalized at this time. We don't have the infrastructure locally just yet to afford drop shipping and for it to work the way that we know it's supposed to work. That's my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And our second to last question comes from a user. Where would you advise to source the manufacturing of household goods?
Manufacturing of household goods. When you say where, you mean in terms of country? or where in China?
I am thinking we're in China.
Well, you can basically source it from anywhere. One of the main places is going to be Guangzhou. And even if depending on the type of household products that you're looking for, EU in China is also going to be a good place. EU is the largest marketplaces in China for wholesale goods, because if you're talking about purchasing off the shelf, so that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And a further comment, Neil Platter. But can we mention the use of a third party in the contract and just identify their name later on?
Yes, you can. That's fine. You can include in the contract that a third party inspection company would be involved in the process. Yes, you can. I hope I understood that properly.
Yes, great. And our final question from Calvin Adams. However, what he asks that we send a written response as he's not getting any audio. However, I will ask the question for the benefit of everyone else on the platform. I believe there's an African Chamber of Commerce in Guangzhou. Are they a credible source of information on the ground? And can they be partnered with as a possible intermediary when doing business in China?
Deborah, sorry, I missed the first part. You said something about a chamber.
African Chamber of Commerce in Guangzhou. Are they a credible source of information? Credible source of information on the ground? And can they be partnered with as a possible intermediary when doing business in China?
I have no information about the African Chamber. I would need to actually do some research or talk to my team on the ground to get some information about the chamber as to whether or not they can assist this gentleman with his sourcing needs on the ground in China. But he himself should be able to get a good understanding as to what their remit is, what they're involved, what sort of services they're providing, and whether or not sourcing is one of the services that they're providing for their members. And if so, then he can start asking some of the relevant questions that we dealt with in the presentation. How do they go about doing that within the chamber to providing it as a benefit to its members. But I honestly don't know of the chamber. But if it's a chamber and it's legitimate and it's there and it's operational and it's doing business, I assume it's a bilateral chamber in some way, and it's not just a chamber that just started that has an African name in China. That's also something he needs to look at as well. So meaning that the chamber is registered in a province, it's licensed as well. It also has a license to enable to assist, license in terms of assisting with exportation, license to do business on the ground to assist its membership with importing and exporting from China. So he has some homework that he needs to do as it pertains to the chamber and its services that it's offering.
Thank you, Michelle. We've 4 questions. However, we just have 2 more. I believe the household items referred to dinnerware, and yes, in China, such as dinner.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for that, Deborah. But I would still say to you, Guangzhou, Guangdong province, which is Guangdong province, is a good place to purchase. But if you're purchasing dinnerware and you're purchasing that, it's going to be wholesale. You're going to be looking for the best prices and quality. You will want to check with the EU markets place in China to get the best price, the best wholesale price for your product.
Thank you, Michelle. And our final question, Karon Ali. What type of infrastructure will drop shipping require? Is it a supply chain issue?
Yes, it is. It is a supply chain issue. Okay. Yes, it's a supply chain issue. I am just thinking out loud here because, as I said, I had to do some research on this about 2 years ago for a client. It's how would it work from China to Trinidad, getting to the clients? It's not just about coming through DHL via air shipping or sea freight. There has to be some kind of infrastructure in place on the ground to deal with it when it arrives. Whether it's coming and it needs packaging or to be prepackaged in warehousing. I will have to revisit that again, but I remember those were some of the things that we were looking at back then. But he can do some research to see, because drop shipping is something that it's always sounds easy, but it's easy for the US market. That's my take.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. We've come to the end of our Q&A session, and we want to thank you again, Michelle, for providing us with clear, detailed information based on your experience working in the China environment.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
To provide the opportunities for our stakeholders to receive relevant and factual information that can assist them to make the best possible informed decisions. A short webinar survey instrument has been disseminated to all participants, and we humbly ask that you complete it and return it to us as soon as possible so that we at exporTT can ensure that we are providing the best possible service to our clients. Again, we thank you for taking part in this webinar, and we certainly hope that the information provided will provide you with all that you need to make the best possible decisions. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the day.